She was slammed against the wall like a criminal, but within minutes, the cop who attacked her would be the one begging for a lawyer. She was slammed against the wall like a criminal, but within minutes, the cop who attacked her would be the one begging for a lawyer. The underground parking garage echoed with the angry voice of Officer Rick Mason, a man known for his short fuse. Mason had no patience for what he thought was just another nosy civilian who didn't know her place. His eyes were locked on a young black woman standing near an unmarked police vehicle. She was calm, too calm. "Hands where I can see them," he barked, storming toward her. Without waiting for a response, he grabbed her by the shoulders and shoved her hard against the cold, concrete wall. People nearby froze. A woman in the background instinctively pulled out her phone. Another officer hesitated, confused. The woman didn't resist. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead with this unnerving calm in her eyes. That woman was Maya Reed, and she wasn't there by accident. What Mason and everyone else didn't know was that Maya was a deep-cover FBI agent. Her mission? To expose systemic police brutality and corruption inside the city's most controversial precinct, and Officer Mason had just handed her the final piece of evidence on a silver platter. Maya had been working on this case for almost a year. The FBI's Internal Corruption Task Force had been investigating several officers suspected of falsifying reports, using excessive force, and covering up violent incidents, particularly those involving minorities. But without hard, undeniable proof, every case kept getting buried. That's where Maya came in. She was the perfect operative, smart, composed, and unshakable under pressure. She was embedded into the community, first as a journalist, then slowly built relationships with officers, ride-alongs, and low-level staff at the department. Every conversation was recorded. Every document she touched was photographed and sent to a secure FBI channel. She watched and waited. And what she uncovered was far worse than anyone had expected. There were secret code words officers used to mark suspects as aggressive before even approaching them. Body cams were often malfunctioning when things got violent. Citizens who complained were labeled as anti-police agitators and often found themselves facing false charges days later. Maya knew it wasn't just bad apples. It was the whole tree. But the FBI needed something public, something undeniable, something that would shake the entire department. And on that day, Officer Mason gave it to her. He didn't know he was being recorded by multiple witnesses. He didn't know the civilian he was roughing up already had federal clearance. And he definitely didn't know that the moment he laid his hands on Maya Reed, she had already pressed a silent alert on her FBI-issued watch. Within 90 seconds, the signal reached her handlers. Within 5 minutes, the entire garage was surrounded. The look on Mason's face went from rage to confusion to fear. "What's going on?" he snapped, as two black SUVs screeched to a stop near the garage entrance. Men in suits stepped out, flashing badges, demanding to see Officer Mason and instructing him to immediately release the woman he had pinned. "This is a secure police facility," he shouted. "No, officer," one of the agents replied coldly. "This is now a federal crime scene." Maya turned slowly to face Mason, her voice steady and sharp. "You just assaulted a federal agent on camera in front of witnesses." And just like that, the power flipped. Mason's eyes widened as Maya spoke. "You just assaulted a federal agent on camera in front of witnesses." His grip loosened. The once confident officer took a step back, his mouth opening slightly, searching for an explanation. But it was too late. Two black SUVs screeched into the underground garage. Their doors flew open as federal agents in suits stepped out, flashing their badges. "Federal agents," one shouted, "Step away from her." The silence that followed was suffocating, the kind of silence that hangs heavy when power shifts. The cops in the garage didn't move. They didn't know whether to protect Mason or step aside. And Mason? His face had gone pale. Maya brushed her blazer straight, walked toward the lead FBI agent, and pulled out her own badge. "Reed, FBI, Internal Corruption Task Force." The shockwave that rippled through the garage was almost visible. Everything Mason thought he knew about the situation flipped upside down. And now, The man who had spent years abusing his badge was face to face with someone who knew exactly what he had done and had the power to bring it all crashing down. But how did it come to this? To understand what just happened, you have to go back nearly a year, before the cameras, before the confrontation, when Maya Reed accepted an assignment most agents would have refused. She was handpicked for an undercover operation called Project Sentinel, a classified FBI mission to infiltrate the 9th Precinct. The department had been flagged after a disturbing number of civil complaints piled up in under 12 months. Broken ribs, lost body cam footage, wrongful arrests, over 40 cases, all with one common thread. The officers walked away clean every time. There were whispers about a code of silence, falsified reports, and even secret signals used to identify targets. The deeper the FBI dug, the darker it looked. But they had no hard proof. So Maya went in. She assumed a new identity, posing as an independent journalist investigating crime patterns and community police relations. The role gave her access to public records, press events, and even ride-alongs with patrol units. Her cover story was airtight. What the precinct didn't know was that her notebook recorded audio, her keychain took HD video, and every time she stepped inside their walls, she was transmitting encrypted data straight to Washington. She wasn't guessing. She was watching. She saw officers slam suspects against cars for minor traffic stops. She heard them laugh about deleting body cam footage. She witnessed a teenager handcuffed simply for questioning why he was being searched. She documented everything. But undercover work isn't just about collecting dirt. It's about patience, waiting for the one moment when everything you've built comes together. For Maya, that meant making herself a target. The FBI knew that unless they caught an officer in the act, on camera, with witnesses, nothing would stick. And Maya, fearless and determined, volunteered to be that final piece. So that morning, she entered the garage knowing full well Mason would be there. She'd watch him for weeks, aggressive, power-hungry, always looking for someone to intimidate. She was counting on it, and he didn't disappoint. The moment he saw her near the unmarked cruiser, he snapped. He didn't ask questions. He didn't investigate. He just acted like he always did. Except this time, the cameras were rolling. The phones were out. The feds were listening. And the woman he thought was just another civilian turned out to be the agent who had been building a case against him for almost a year. In less than 5 minutes, his entire career unraveled. And it was just the beginning. Maya didn't say another word. She didn't need to. The FBI agents swarmed in, commanding the space with sharp precision. The agents moved like a unit, methodical, calm, fully in control. Officers who once walked with arrogance now stood frozen, uncertain of what came next. Officer Mason was quickly separated from the group. 2 agents pulled him aside, hands resting near their belts, not threatening, but ready. One of them read his rights quietly, voice steady. Mason tried to protest. "I didn't know who she was," he shouted. "She didn't identify herself." "She didn't need to," the agent replied. "You laid hands on an unarmed woman without cause. And now you're going to explain why," under oath. Meanwhile, Maya stood off to the side, watching everything unfold. Her job wasn't done, but this was the moment she'd waited for. Inside the station, the news hit like a bomb. Phones rang. Commanders barked orders. Internal affairs rushed in. The entire 9th Precinct was officially under federal review. Desks were locked down. Computers were seized. Backup hard drives were pulled from evidence rooms. No one was allowed to leave. A few officers tried to act casual, but the truth was clear. They were panicking. And they had every reason to. For months, Maya had built a network of quiet allies, janitors, front desk clerks, even a couple of rookie officers who had seen too much and said nothing. They didn't know she was FBI, but they trusted her. They had slipped her documents, shared quiet tips, even warned her who to avoid in the building. Now, those whispers were turning into testimonies. And the case? It was already airtight. The FBI had video, audio, body cam downloads, internal emails, and reports that contradicted sworn statements. Dozens of small lies were about to become federal crimes. But the real shock came when they opened the evidence locker. Inside, they found confiscated phones that had never been logged, bags of drugs labeled with the wrong case numbers, and footage from body cams that had supposedly been lost. Everything was there, just hidden poorly by officers who never imagined they'd get caught. Maya's mission wasn't just to expose Officer Mason. It was to pull the thread and unravel the entire rotten fabric. As word spread across the city, media vans began lining up outside the precinct. Reporters tried to push through the barriers, but the FBI wasn't talking yet. Inside, the interrogation rooms were full. One by one, officers were pulled in and questioned. Some tried to deny everything. Others broke down fast, asking for deals, naming names. By the end of the day, 6 officers were under arrest. 15 more were suspended. And Officer Mason? He was let out in handcuffs, head down, flanked by the same kind of agents he used to mock on patrol. Maya watched him go, her expression unreadable. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about showing the world what happens when power is unchecked, and proving that no badge puts you above the law. As the sun set over the city, the 9th Precinct stood quiet for the first time in years. The walls that had hidden so much for so long had finally been breached. And Maya Reed, once a shadow in their system, had become the woman who tore it all down. But her story wasn't over yet, because the corruption didn't stop at one station. It ran deeper, and she was just getting started. By morning, the entire country knew her name. Undercover FBI agent exposes police brutality ring. 9th Precinct under federal lockdown after shocking arrest. Maya Reed, the woman who took down the blue wall. Every major news outlet ran the story. Social media exploded. Civil rights groups praised her. Activists held rallies with her face on signs. But not everyone was cheering. The backlash came fast, and it came loud. Police unions called the operation a betrayal. Talk radio hosts accused her of being anti-cop. One local politician even said this stunt put good officers in danger. Threats poured in online, some anonymous, some not. Maya was assigned 24/7 federal protection. She didn't flinch. She'd known this would happen. You can't pull the mask off a corrupt system without it trying to destroy you in return. But what shook her wasn't the noise from the outside. It was what she uncovered next. Because as agents dug deeper into the 9th Precinct's files, a pattern began to emerge. A trail of names, dates, and incidents that pointed to something bigger. This wasn't just about one bad precinct. It was part of a network. Multiple officers had transferred in and out of the 9th Precinct over the past 5 years, landing in other departments with similar complaints. Internal reports had been lost or buried. Supervisors who were supposed to flag misconduct had instead signed off on promotions. In some cases, whistleblowers were fired or mysteriously discredited. The FBI realized the corruption was more than a local cancer. It was systemic, a network of dirty cops, lazy leadership, and willful ignorance stretching across jurisdictions. And Maya? She was now the face of the firestorm. Even allies turned cold. Within the FBI, not everyone was happy. Some agents feared the political fallout. Others thought her methods were too aggressive, especially the public takedown. One supervisor pulled her aside and said, "You've embarrassed powerful people. Be careful." But Maya didn't regret it. What other choice did she have? The system hadn't listened when citizens spoke, when lawsuits failed, when victims died. It only responded to exposure. She returned to D.C. for a closed-door debriefing with the Department of Justice. The room was full of serious faces, officials from the DOJ, FBI brass, and internal affairs. They asked about her methods, her notes, her decisions. When it was over, one of them leaned back and said, "You understand what happens next, Agent Reed?" She nodded. "I'm not afraid of fallout," she said. "I'm afraid of silence." The streets speak louder than headlines. Days later, Maya received an anonymous package at her safe house. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter and a folded photo. The letter was from a mother. Her 17-year-old son had been arrested 2 years ago by Officer Mason. He never made it home. No charges. No answers. The department said he had a medical episode in custody. Maya's investigation proved otherwise. The photo was of the boy, smiling. Alive. Free. The mother wrote, "You gave me something I thought I'd never have again, truth. Thank you." Maya held that photo for a long time. It reminded her why she started this mission, why she endured months of isolation, danger, and deception, why she let herself be slammed against a wall to show the world what was really happening behind the badge. But it wasn't over. The ninth precinct was only one piece. And now that the truth was out, the walls of silence in other cities were beginning to crack too. Maya had become more than just an agent. She was a symbol, a signal. A storm was coming, and she would be at the center of it. She was a symbol, a signal. A storm was coming, and she would be at the center of it. Maya didn't go back to the field office. She didn't need to. By now, she was being invited to speak before oversight committees. She met with Department of Justice attorneys preparing a case against several precinct commanders. She was looped into an internal task force dedicated to rooting out cross-agency corruption. But Maya didn't care about the spotlight. She cared about the system. And the more she uncovered, the more she realized the system was never broken. It was built this way. The Bad Apple's narrative didn't explain decades of erased footage, ignored complaints, and fake charges. This wasn't failure, it was design. A quiet, calculated culture that protected the powerful and punished the innocent. Maya wasn't just exposing it anymore. She was dismantling it. Every precinct that had transferred a dirty officer into the 9th was now under review. Every captain who signed off on fake reports was facing possible indictment. The FBI's corruption task force tripled in size. Whistleblowers were stepping forward in cities Maya had never even set foot in, because now they had someone who had proven the truth could win. But even as the system cracked, the threats kept coming. Someone mailed a bullet to her apartment door. Another sent a photo of her mother's house. Her team moved her to a secure location. Maya didn't flinch, but she didn't sleep much either. She wasn't afraid of death. She was afraid of failure. Afraid the noise would drown out the mission. Afraid this moment of justice would be brief and forgotten. One night, she sat alone in the dark, listening to a recorded interview she had done with a retired officer who had once tried to report misconduct. "I filed a report," the old man said in the tape. "Next thing I knew, they moved me to desk duty. Then the death threats started, and they said I was mentally unstable. That's how they do it. They make you the problem." Maya paused the recording. She knew what came next. They would try to discredit her, paint her as emotional, as someone with an agenda. She was ready for it, because the mission was bigger than her. A new mission begins. 3 months after the arrest of Officer Mason, Maya stood on the steps of a courthouse in a different city. Cameras flashed. Reporters called her name. But she wasn't there for publicity. She was there for a new operation, a new target, another precinct, another pattern, another cover-up. She'd been invited to lead the investigation. This time, she wouldn't be going undercover. This time, everyone would know she was coming. One reporter shouted from the crowd, "Agent Reed, what's next for you?" Maya looked straight into the lens and said calmly, "We're just getting started." The footage went viral. People began calling her the watchdog, an agent who turned her badge into a weapon for justice. Victims began stepping forward from places long silenced. Some precincts began cleaning house before she ever arrived. The system had finally started looking over its shoulder, and it would never feel safe again. The final message. Maya's mission was never about taking down one man, one station, or even one department. It was about truth. It was about the young man who didn't make it home, the mother who never got answers, the witnesses who stayed quiet out of fear, the good cops who were buried by bad leadership. It was about showing the world that power, when unchecked, becomes dangerous, and that justice is not given. It must be taken, fought for, defended. And sometimes it takes one person with the courage to walk into the fire and light it from the inside. Maya Reed did just that, and she wasn't done. Because behind every wall of silence, there's a door. And now, she had the key.